Truth tables. That's the topic of chapter 3 in the textbook. Though we start a little smaller than whole truth tables, we start with sentences, complex sentences, and we basically in 3.1, which I'm going to do some problems from today, the idea is to find the value, the truth value of the whole sentence given the truth value of its parts. All right. A key aspect of this, though, is identifying the main operator in a sentence. So I put some rules up here. I mean, the main operator is defined as the operator that has the widest scope, which means applies to most of things in the sentence. So, like if you look at number 3 here, right? There's two operators. They're both conjunctions. This operator, though, only applies within the parentheses, whereas this operator applies to the whole sentence, this first part and the parentheses part. So that's what it means to say this has wider scope, right? Same here. There's two operators. There's disjunction and the negation. The negation only applies to the be, though, whereas the disjunction applies to both or connects both. So the disjunction is the main operator. So that's the definition of the main operator, is the operator with the widest scope. But here's some simple rules for identifying the main operator if the scope thing isn't clicking right away. Obviously, if there's only one operator in a sentence, that's the main operator. So A or B, the disjunction is the only operator. If there's only one operator in a sentence that's not in parentheses or brackets, that's the main operator. So here you've got two operators. You've got disjunction and conjunction, but the conjunction's in the parentheses. And like I said, that means it doesn't have very wide scope because it only applies inside. So the disjunction is the main operator here. If there's more than one operator outside of parentheses, there should only be one that's not a negation. In other words, the only way you get multiple operators outside of parentheses is if there's negations. And if that's the case, there should only be one that's not a negation, in which case that's the main operator. And finally, if all you have are negations, and I think there's a problem, number 5. If all you have are negations like this, not A, then the one that's furthest to the left is the main operator. Because again, that's the last one that applies. That's the other way you can think of the main operator, is like the last operator that you would apply, right? And when we're figuring these out. So if A was true, for example, this negation would turn it false. This negation would turn it back true, false, true, false, right? So this is the last one you'd look at to see what the truth value of the whole sentence is. All right, so I want to do some problems from exercise 3.1. I'm doing some odd number problems since the even numbered ones are assigned. And in 3.1, the sentences are assigned truth values. So if you look all the way at the top, it says assume these truth values for the SL, that's sentential logic, atomic sentences A, B, and C. So we know that A equals true, B equals false, and C equals true. Okay, and that's going to apply to all of these, and those are fixed. So in the first, I think 3.2 is similar. He assigns truth values. Okay, so the first, when you're doing these kinds of problems with just complex sentences, especially when you're just getting started, the first thing to do is just put the truth value under the letter, right? So we've got A is true, B we know is false, so I put the F under the B, right? Now we know that if you have a false sentence and you negate it, that gives you a true sentence, right? So then this false goes away, and we've got true or true, and we know from the truth table for the disjunction that if you have both disjuncts true, the whole thing comes out true. Maybe we could write out the truth table for the disjunction quick. here. All right, so if you have a disjunction and both disjuncts are true, the disjunction comes out true. Oops. If you have true, false, it comes out true. If you have false, true, it comes out true. And if you have false, false, it comes out false. So this is called the truth table for disjunction. And what the truth table shows is every possible combination, right? So if you have two atomic sentences connected by an operator, they could either both be true, they could both be false, or one true and one false, right? A true, B false, A false, B true. So those four possibilities are exhaustive. That's all the possibilities, right? So here we ended up with A, which was true, and not B, which was true. So we had T and T, which means we were basically on this line of the truth table. And when both disjuncts are true, the whole thing comes out true. So the answer for number 1 is true. All right, number 3. Let's go ahead and do the truth table for conjunction. So conjunction comes out true if both are true, but otherwise it comes out false. So in other words, for the conjunction, both conjuncts have to be true in order for the whole thing to be true. So false, false gives us false, right? So again, if we have two sentences, if they're both true, the conjunction comes out true. Otherwise, the conjunction comes out false. That's very different from the disjunction, which only comes out false on one line of the truth table if both are false. Okay, so move this down so I can do this problem. Okay, so this one now we have 3 atomic sentences. We know A is true, we know B is false, and we know C is true. Again, those are assigned here, right? That's where I'm getting those values, all right? So now in the parentheses, we have a conjunction with the first conjunct false and the second conjunct true. That's this line, right? And so this then underneath the ampersand in the parentheses is going to be false. Now we can get rid of these now since we're done with them. We don't want to get confused. So now we do this outside. This is the main operator. That's the last operation. So the main operator connects a true sentence A and a false sentence B and C. And we know if the first conjunct is true and the second conjunct is false, the whole thing comes out as false. All right, so that's the answer for number 3. Okay, so number 1 was true. Number 3 is false. All right. Now, B, if you remember, was false. The truth table for the negation is pretty simple. If you have a sentence that's true, there's only 2 possible ways. Remember the principle of bivalence. Any sentence can only have 2 possible truth values. It could be true, in which case the negation is false, or it could be false, in which case the negation is going to be true. All right, so B, we are told again up top here, B is false. So if we put that under the B, sorry, should have done this beforehand. So if we put an F under the B, we know then this negation is going to give us a value of true, because that's what negation does. It turns a true sentence false, and a false sentence true. So now we have the negation of a true sentence, which is now going to turn that back to false. All right, so this is the main operator, the first negation to the left. And so that whole sentence comes out false. Okay, so number 7. We're told again that B is false and C is true. Right? And so false disjunction true comes out true. Right? So the sentence inside of parentheses is true. But then, of course, the main operator is the only operator outside of parentheses of the negation. And if you negate a true sentence, then you get a false sentence. All right, so the answer to number 7 is false. Number 9. Now, again, remember the rules for identifying the main operator. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 operators here, but there's only one that's outside of parentheses or brackets. That's this negation. So that's the main operator. That's the last thing we're going to do. If you ignore that and look inside the brackets, you have a B and parentheses. So this is then the main operator inside the brackets. And then these two then have the least scope. So let's let's go. So we know B is false, and we know A is true, and we know C is true as well. So we could do it like that. False and true or false, since the negation of a true sentence is false. False and true, since the disjunction, as long as one disjunct is true, it comes out true. But again, for conjunction, if at least one conjunct is false, the whole thing comes out false. Right? Now that's all what was inside. Remember, we did all inside. So we started with B, A. So we have to remember at the very end, the main operator here is this negation. Right? So we have the negation of a false sentence, because the whole thing inside square brackets is false. And the negation of a false sentence is, of course, true. All right, so notice as soon as we saw B here was false and it was part of a conjunction, we knew everything inside of the brackets, this whole sentence was going to be false, and the negation of false is true. So this stuff we didn't really even have to do, because again, if you look at the truth table for conjunction, as long as at least one of the conjuncts is false, the whole sentence comes out false. All right. So as soon as we saw B was false, we knew this whole sentence inside brackets was false, and the negation would be true. Okay, 11, I'm running out of time, so I'm going to go fast. So B is false, but the negation of false gives us a true. Whoops. Conjunction, negation of T or not T. So again, not false, or negation of a false sentence true. And this is the negation of, again, as long as one disjunct is true, the whole thing's true. So inside parentheses is true. So now we have true and not true gives us false. And we know in a conjunction, if there's at least one false conjunct, the whole thing comes out false. So always work from innermost parentheses out to the main operator. Here we have two operators outside of parentheses, but this one's a negation. So the and is the main operator, the conjunction. So not C is not true and false and not false. Not the negation of a true sentence gives us a false sentence. And now again, you can see this is false and this is a conjunction. It doesn't really matter what this is, right? I mean, we can still do all this, but as soon as we know we have one false conjunct, we know the whole sentence is going to come out false. So it doesn't even really matter what this bracketed sentence comes out. If it comes out true,